Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 2 of the Sim Racing in Focus podcast, where we talk about sim racing, as the name suggests. If you're coming back from last week, thanks for tuning in once again. And if you're new to the podcast, hopefully you'll enjoy the episode and stick around for future ones. I'm your host, Dean Redder. I'm the owner of a small startup site known as Sim Racing in Focus .blog, where we initially aim to bring blog style content regarding sim racing to you. We're now going out via this podcast. On tonight's episode, we'll be doing our usual weekly drive-by segments, including race recaps from the V8 Veterans, the East Coast V8 Supercar Series, and a little bit of an update regarding the Logitech G Pro Invitational V8 Supercar Series and how their pre-qualifying is tracking. Our other leagues are yet to begin, but we'll also cover a few news topics that have come up during the week. It's now iRacing week number 8. We'll be looking at week number 7 on the show today. Let's get into it. Okay, everyone, I think we'll start this week's episode with a look at the Logitech G Pro Invitational Series. We've got quite a big show to get through tonight. Once again, gone over time, but we'll get through these initial segments quite quickly. We've seen the first round of pre-qualifying get underway for the Logitech G Pro Invitational Series. The pre-qualification process for the Logitech G Pro Invitational Series took place over 4 nights at 2 tracks. Those tracks were Phillip Island and Winton, where a combined lap time from the both circuits was made for each driver using their best laps at each circuit. So obviously, if your combined time at both circuits was the lowest, you go through it first. And this process is all to set the grid for what will be known as the qualifying series. And then I believe from the qualifying series, the top 25 drivers progress through to the Logitech G Pro Invitational Series itself, where the top 20 from last season have already pre-qualified. So a little bit of a lengthy process, but important for number crunching and getting the right drivers into into the starting grid, which I think is around about 45 cars at the time round 1 kicks off. So it is the Premier Series in Australia for V8 Supercar, so it is a difficult process to get in, but obviously it's there for a reason, to try and get the best drivers in Australia there on the grid come round 1. Leading the way from pre-qualifying, now that it has been decided, was Griffin Gardner from 95 Sim Sport, last season's V8 Supercar Online Premier Series champion. He goes through former champion, I believe, from season 1, Jared Fieldcell from Lobs Esports in P2, and Luke Mitchinson from Race on Oz in P3. They were the top qualifiers on the night, and obviously there would be another 42 drivers taken from that pre-qualification results, all going through into the qualifying series, which is due to kick off inside iRacing's week 8. So from next week, we'll start seeing results from that qualification series. Moving on to the V8 Veterans. Last week, they went to Zandvoort, where it turned out quite an interesting race. Big talking points from this race probably started in qualifying, when series leader Mick Taliancic probably didn't have the qualifying session that he was looking for, would start the race out of P21, I believe it was. But then also we had Scotty Gamble really set a good lap time in quali, and I think he was about 2 or 3 tenths up on the rest of the field. So he set the tone early doors for the pace that he had, and the opening stanza of the race pretty much went true to form when Scotty got out to a comfortable lead before a pretty crucially timed safety car right on right on the point of where everyone had started stopping for their first pit stops. Threw a bit of a spanner in the works. A lot of drivers elected to pit twice under the safety car, which just added chaos and confusion to the race, trying to follow it during the broadcast. But there was a lot of then obviously deviated strategies, which you would see half the field pit once and then have to pit again later in the race, and other, well, most drivers still who elected to do the 2 pit stop would have to pit later in the race again as well, because they couldn't quite manage to stretch it all the way home. But yeah, that really livened the race up, because Scotty was quite dominant up until that point, and we've seen a lot of the leaders get back down into the middle of the pack and have to make their way back through over what was a really, really long stint. After that lap, sort of 14, 15 safety car, there was about 47 laps in total for the race. So, yeah, it really made the race interesting. What it all boiled down to in the end is, with a couple of laps to go, we found that Ken Latta from Fishy Motorsports and certainly Scott Gamble and Darren Lobb out of DPR were the top 3 drivers on the track, and Mick Taliench managed to find his way all the way up into 4th after the less than ideal start to the race. But he was struggling towards the end of the race, and things really got quite interesting with car contact and everything like that, and he would inevitably drop back down again. But it would finish that way. It would finish with Scott Gamble taking the race win from Kenneth Latta, Fishy Motorsports, in second, and Darren Lobb coming home for DPR in third. That result would see Ken Latta take over the series lead from Mick Taliench, and Blake Delaney still holding down third. Those results are yet to go final, I believe, or at least they haven't been finalised on the Facebook page. So one to keep an eye on. But obviously that top spot does have a golden ticket through to the Logitech G. So a lot of these drivers are all in for the qualification series. I know certainly Kenneth Latta is, Michael Taliench is, and Blake Delaney is as well. So yeah, so this is those drivers are trying to keep their spots alive via both means, whether it's pre-qual and going into the qualification series, or ideally they can secure it with a golden ticket in this league. So yep, a big change at the top there from this round. So that starts to heat up now. They're through 7 rounds. So we're past halfway, I believe, in that championship. I have to double check on that. But it's all starting to unfold there. We move on now to the East Coast V8 Supercar Series, which they also visited Zandvoort. I believe it was round number 3 for them. This race was probably a little bit less chop and changey when you compare it to the V8 veterans race, but you got a couple of exceptionally quick drivers at the front of this field. James Scott, which has basically won, I think, the 3 races up until this point. He would go on to qualify on pole and win this one in quite comfortable fashion by 9.5 seconds over Evolution Racing's Robert Gibbs. That would be James' teammate Dylan Rudd from Lobbs Esports, also rounding out the podium there. James and Dylan have got exemptions already through the Logitech G Pro Invitational, so I think from memory, we're looking at Sean McNamara as one of the guys that currently holds down the automatic exemption spot, and last week's guest, Sean McNamara. And I think Jacob O'Reilly from Vermilion Motorsport. So that's accurate up until the results of round 3. So I think Jacob there holds down the second ticket heading into round 4. So yeah, some interesting results coming in there. Those guys that we mentioned that hold down the tickets, they're around about 4th and 5th in the championship. So those top 3 have already got exemptions sorted for themselves. So it's a little bit of a trickier one to follow along with, because those people that are going to get those tickets may not finish, first and second in the championship table. Okay, that pretty much sums up the races from this week. Zandvoort was an interesting track. It was certainly a little bit weird to see the V8s on the big banking, and there was certainly a lot of incidents around the carousel and how cars exited the carousel. It made for interesting viewing, but not a track that I would say is quite common in these cars. So you could definitely see a few of our usual characters that have been traveling really well up until this point might have just been a little bit off for these rounds, but it keeps it interesting. With all that being said, I think we're going to move into a little bit of news. Alrighty, a little bit of breaking news from this week. Fanatec have announced further delays to their CSL-DD products. This is the latest in a little bit of a string of setbacks for the products, which I believe went on pre-sale Black Friday of 2023. So I'm not sure what the expectation was regarding how long that pre-order was going to be, but the latest announcement from Fanatec indicated that they hadn't secured licensing from Sony, which I believe these products are going to be cross-compatible with PlayStation. That's kind of a big deal. I know you take a risk when you do pre-order stuff that this type of thing can occur, but you would probably, in my opinion, at least expect that licensing's been secured by the time it goes on pre-sale. I don't know. Just as a customer, that's something that I would probably not be overly happy with. But in saying that, I've been a Fanatec customer in the past. I've had and used quite a lot of their products and not had any issues with them myself, but I certainly feel for those people that have done some pre-orders with Fanatec, and to looking to February as a possible shipment date, but nothing concrete. It's a little bit concerning. Hopefully everything works towards a decent resolution for everyone there with that one. And Fanatec, I think, have had some questions raised about customer service, but I don't really think this is a customer service issue. It's a timing issue, and in terms of licensing, it's just hopefully that needs to get lined out quickly, and everyone gets their product. So a little bit of bad news on that front, but look, hopefully that gets resolved, as we keep saying. A little bit of good news from this week is the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup. I have that right. I'm just checking it out now. It's quite a mouthful. The qualification process for this series has been run and decided. So this is probably, as far as road racing is concerned, on iRacing, this is probably one of the premier, if not the premier series for people that are looking to really compete professionally. There's over a $200,000 US prize pool on offer for people competing in this. It is a tremendously difficult thing to qualify for. But as we mentioned in last week's episode, it's a series that, at least from Australia's point of view, has been incredibly successful. There's a story out on the simracinginfocus.blog website sort of highlighting just the amount of success that Australia has had, and Australian drivers in particular has had in this series. I don't know, is it 3 of the first 5 or 3 of the first 6 championships have gone to Australians? I believe it's 2 to Josh Rogers, and certainly last year's one to Altus Esports, Jordan Caruso. So the good news, again, from the qualification series is obviously Jordan won last year, so he is in again for season 2, and it looks like on the website he's confirmed to be taking place. So obviously representing Australia there, and Altus Esports, also an Australian team. So good to see those guys are getting onto the world stage. And we also have Cooper Webster, who's racing for Oracle Red Bull Racing Esports. He's the second Australian in that field. So 2 Australians. We also have Dina Lombardi, Simone Maria Machado, who are also in the Aussie-backed Alta Z Sports, but racing under different nationalities. But, certainly can follow along. And if the Aussie drivers aren't doing any good, we sort of wish those guys all the best as well, because it'd be, if we can't get an Aussie driver up the front, it'd be good to see an Aussie team there instead. So, look, yeah, there's out of the 40 or so competitors, there's a good, strong, healthy Australian contingent again this year. So we'll try and keep up to date with how they're traveling, because it's certainly something that at least I think locally may not get the attention that it deserves. But unfortunately, Josh Rogers doesn't look like he's going to be competing. And I think we've had previous drivers such as Dane Warren, Jared Filsell, and apologies if I missed anyone else, but they're guys that have been in this series that don't look to be competing again this year for probably various reasons. But yeah, we'll certainly be all over the Aussie contingent that is going there. So that's just a little bit of news that we just chose to cover. We did work through the segments a little bit quickly this week, because we do have a rather long interview. Once again, I didn't do a great job at keeping it to time. So, however, I think you'll find tonight's guest, Lasith Liyanage from Phoenix Racing Team, has got a very, very interesting and long and in-depth story with his involvement in iRacing, and his involvement, and also his son's involvement in iRacing. And if anyone's done any participation in the V8 Supercar, they'll know of the last name Liyanage and how successful they've been on track. I was certainly taken by surprise just how in-depth and how involved they are, whether it's racing, whether it's coaching, whether it's real-world driving. They certainly know how to maximize their potential and are now helping other people maximize their potential. So once again, I hope you can sit back and enjoy our interview with Phoenix Motorsports' Lasith Liyanage. Okay, Lasith Liyanage, welcome to the Sim Racing in Focus podcast. How are you today, mate?
I'm good, mate. Yourself?
Mate, can't complain. So I'm a big day at the beach and just sitting back now and having a few beers. So it's good that you given up your time to come and have a chat. So yeah, mate, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Just not sure if you caught the first episode, but we're just trying to speak to someone new each week, someone within the iRacing community here at least in the first couple of episodes of the podcast, get their own sort of unique experiences with iRacing or sim racing in general, and certainly think you have a unique experience so far from what I've observed. So hopefully, we'll get a bit of a chance to listen to you talk tonight and go from there.
Yeah, thank you. I listened to the first episode and I thought it was bang on, and I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, not to toot my own horn, but I thought it come together okay for a first attempt. So yeah, hopefully we'll keep that rolling on here. But look, let's get into it, and we'll just start broadly here and talking about yourself in particular, like a bit of a generic startup question, sort of what got you started in iRacing, and maybe you could give us a little bit of understanding with that, and then how that sort of flowed on to leading you into your first iRacing team.
Well, iRacing for me was more of a tool to do some practice for my real life track stuff that I've done in the past. I've been doing hill climb racing and track days with real cars for a long time, probably just over 20 years. And iRacing was more around getting used to tracks before I going to a track there, like Phillip Island, for example. And now we got Winton and Sandown as well. So it was more to do some practice at Phillip Island that sort of got me started in iRacing.
Okay,
But
so
yeah,
yes, so you're Victorian based then, and they're two tracks that
correct.
yeah. Any other tracks that people might be able to relate to that are around your area?
Around my area, the closest track to me is Sandown. I'm probably about 15 minutes, 20 minutes away from Sandown, about 100 k's away from Phillip Island, and I would say about 200 odd k's away from Winton.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So just more of a practice tool there in the beginning. Sorry if I cut you off a little bit there.
No, that's all right.
Yeah. Okay, so you got into it just for the sake of, I guess it offered a bit of the physics and the scan data and how sort of accurate iRacing can be, offered you that a bit of a training tool to
Yeah, it was more of a seed time kind of a thing for me before I got into the real track. So do some laps, get a bit of a feel for the track, and obviously they don't have all the same cars that I've owned in the past, but that definitely helped just to get my eye in for the real tracks.
Okay, so I guess much like Sean, you and I we go back a couple of years. Very, very similar.
Yeah, I would say probably 3 years, I guess.
Yeah. Back to the admin side. So at some point, obviously, the racing become more about practice, more than just about practice. It got to you as well as the competition, I suppose, of iRacing sort of led you to be a little bit more competitive.
Yeah. So I started doing those practice laps just before track days, but then I was doing officials and obviously just like everyone else, started with MX5, worked my way through the licensing ranks and then ended up getting to the supercar. And I thought that was a very difficult car to learn to drive on the sim. I have no idea how it is in real life, but I'm assuming it'll be just as hard, if not more. So that got me sort of started with the racing side of it. I've never really raced in a league before until I got into the Jinx series, which became RSRA later on.
Yep.
And that got me started back of second split, and then worked my way up to the top split, racing there. And I think we had 6 seasons of RSRA all up, and between me and Rehan, we managed to win 3 of them.
Oh, I don't doubt you at all. I'm surprised to actually hear we did get through 6 seasons there.
Yeah, we did.
With Real Sim Racing Australia, and I remember doing some admin type stuff for that league, and one of those things was diving back through and trying to come up with a little bit of a statistics base for race starts, race wins, and things like that. And I think I come on board maybe the 2nd or 3rd season, and at that time you were probably nigh peak of your powers. So like you go from, and you sort of, okay, I come into the league and here you are winning, if not a real podium threat every week, and you look back and you're only going back a season or two, and you're going, okay, what's Laz doing at the back of split 2? It happened very, very fast for you, didn't it? That it went, and you're right. The V8 supercar is a very difficult car to learn, and most people will probably tell you that it'll take 6 to 12 months before you would get that sort of improvement out of somebody.
Yeah.
So
I would say I'm reasonably a quick learner with anything that I sort of put my mind into, and I'll either put 100% or I'll put nothing at all. There is no in between when it comes down to effort. So I'll put everything on the line to improve, and the results were coming. And I remember the RSRA series was a fixed setup series, So and then it became an open setup series, and I won the last of the fixed setup series. And then I managed to win the open setup series straight after in the second season. So
Yeah.
um, I thought that was quite interesting and at the same time quite challenging.
Yeah. So I think from memory, it was RSRA followed a similar type of schedule to the iRacing calendar. So to put that in perspective, we're really talking two iRacing seasons between being the backer split to contending for a championship, which is impressive in its own feat. And yeah, I can that sort of level of performance increase, I think, is something when I've sort of followed you along, you can see that steep curve, whether it's, you yourself racing or, as I'm sure we'll get into later on, other members that are sort of close to you in the team environment that
Mm.
obviously get on that curve as well. So there's a little secret unlocked to unlock here in terms about how to go about self-improvement. But okay, so you got yourself into that league, and so now give us a bit of an idea. Were you a privateer when you entered that league, and then you got affiliated with the
No,
team?
funny enough, I entered the league as a privateer, and then JP from JP Simshed approached me and said, "Les, do you want to join my team?" I thought, you know what, it might not be a bad idea because I'm a newbie to the supercar, and I'm newbie to the league racing as well. So I thought it might not be a bad idea to join a team and learn from it. So yeah, so that got me into the team. I think at the time they had probably 30 plus members in that team. So it was quite a large team. Um, and that sort of got me started, and I got to learn from a couple of people. I remember Lachlan Manif, who was in the team, and I got quite a few pointers out of him because, and then now he went to do all the real life stuff. I think he's racing TCRs last time I checked. So
Yep, yep. Yes, it's a name that rings a bell. I'm not sure exactly what real life driving is, but I'm sure I've come across in an iRacing sense before as well, which I'm sure I would have if it was around about that time.
yeah, I mean, we had guys like Corby Jones in our team,
Yep,
who went into SSR afterwards. But
yep.
yeah, so I got to learn from a couple of different people in my early days.
Okay. And so the way iRacing teams work was that were you familiar with the team environment in iRacing, or were you just coming in unaware of that situation? And once you're in the team, did that have was that a bit eye opening and a bit did that help you in a lot, or I guess just get you comfortable within the league racing environment?
To be honest, I felt like a fish out of water. Um, it was a completely new ball game for me, and yes, it was definitely eye opener. Getting into a team environment and not really knowing much about league racing as well as a team environment. So it was definitely a big challenge just
So
to
it's
find
probably
my feet around
mm,
the team.
so it's probably safe to say at this point in time you've probably got no aspirations as to starting your own team. Is
Oh,
that, would that
definitely
be
not.
fair? Say,
No.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I would say so.
yeah. So okay. So were you in that environment long before you started to realize that leadership or mentorship was something that you could provide others as well?
Oh, look, in my work life, I was managing teams, so it sort of came natural to me, the whole leadership side of it. So after about a season or two in the team, um, I was asked to lead the team, and all of a sudden, this newbie who came into the team has been asked to lead the team, and obviously, as you can imagine, not everyone was happy with that idea. But I've already gained some good traction for myself. I was getting good results, and I believe at that time I would have won the first championship as well. And that
you're
gave
not
me an
suggesting.
opportunity.
Yeah, I was just going to say you're not suggesting for 1 minute that there was politics involved.
There's always politics in team environment, unfortunately.
Okay, so okay, so so a surprise sort of move for yourself then as well to be sort of elevated to that
Yeah.
level
So
within the
when
team.
when I was when I was asked to do that, I thought, you know what, this is a good opportunity um to coach these guys, because I was already starting to coach people in my team, um and they were getting results. And obviously JP saw something, some sort of potential in me to lead the team. And from memory, I did that for another season. I think it was probably 2 seasons, and I won my second championship while I was leading the team. And
Yep.
it was a fair bit of pressure for me, because I need to worry about my own performance as well as a whole bunch of weird supercar drivers within the team. I think we had probably 10 guys competing
Yep.
in both splits. So that's a good number of people who were trying to get their performance up in the supercar.
Yeah, so you've got at this point in time, you've got a RSRA divides into probably a premier split and a development split, and they're running
Yeah,
on separate nights. So you're not just over individual drivers, but you're also over multiple race nights.
yeah, we had 2 different
Multiple.
race nights.
Yeah, so multiple different days of practice, trying to sort of juggle all that around, as well as worry about your own championship at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. So there was a fair bit on my plate, and obviously, I run a business as well, so I work in there full time as well. So
Yeah, and it's one of those things, isn't it? The more you put in, the old Nutrigrain saying, the more you put in, the more you get out. It's it is sometimes can be just that simple with sim racing. If you want to get faster, you just need to do more laps. So
yeah,
everyone has their own level of how much time they can commit to it, and then also how much time they're going to ask of you to be able to be there to give them feedback on those laps they are doing.
yeah. I mean, it's seed time, and it's about valuable seed time. There's no point in cutting laps for the sake of cutting laps just because it doesn't cost you anything to cut lap on iRacing.
Mm.
We go back, we look at data, we compare data to the other teammates. Um, we do a lot of that stuff in the background to improve performance. And that's when we're running just a fixed setup. And once we went to the open setup era of RSRA, it was a whole different ball game. I had to understand the things that I learned with real cars in, suspension tuning and things like that, handling of the car and all that kind of stuff. I had to put that into iRacing, which
Yep.
was not that hard. I mean, iRacing mimics the real life suspension geometries and things like that. So quite quickly I got my head around that and started making some decent setups that can get the team running with the front running guys.
Yeah. I think the data analytics side is probably going to come up again a few times tonight. Early doors though, were you familiarizing yourself with Motec, or was it VRS as your sort of preferred platform where you did? Well, these are the type of systems that are offering a service to an iRacer to track their data inputs.
Well, for a while we were using both of them. Um,
Okay.
but with Motec, not everyone was using Motec. The guys who were running the real life in real life racing teams who were in our team, they were running Motec. So I sort of had to get myself familiarized with both Motec and VRS. But VRS was the biggest platform for iRacing guys to use. So we ended up ended up converting those guys who were using Motec into VRS as well to keep the entire team on the same platform, which makes it easier.
Yeah.
It's a very valuable tool, VRS though.
Okay. Absolutely. Um, and I suppose JP at the time's doing this, but because he's he owns the league. He also owns the team, so he's looking for, how do I say this, to not be seen as favourable to his own team, I suppose. So you picked up you won't just sort of, you were sort of put into a tough position where probably not just your own team, but also, there was outside pressures going on there at the same time. So, when you go through situations like that, did you come out of it sort of going, I actually really enjoyed that leadership opportunity, or was that something that you sort of struggled with at the time?
To be honest, I enjoyed it. It was tough at times, especially when you got a whole lot of different personalities in one team, with different challenges for themselves. And at the same time, the scenario you were talking about, where JP owns the league as well as the team, but he wanted me to have the team side of it so he can keep his hands clean of that. So it was a bit of a tough juggle.
Yeah, because that's probably something that maybe people on the outside didn't know, that you would sort of taken ownership of that league, but sorry, that team. Yeah, well, that covers off your sort of start really well. I'm actually going to leave you with a quote, Lass. Here we go. This is how in depth we go. I remember I actually spoke to JP, back around this time, and not to delve into my own team stuff, but like I was having a conversation with him about how we could go from being a middle of the pack team to trying to go door to door with you guys, essentially. And he just, we had a good lengthy conversation, but this was the one quote that it stood out to me. He just said, Dean, it's really simple. You just need a Lasith Liyanage in your team. And I think he meant you need someone that actually is just solely focused on track and helping people. And I think getting everyone to buy into practices and doing that data analyst, those types of things, rather than your other team admin things like sorting liveries and all this stuff that really doesn't correlate to on track results. So it was kind of funny at the time, but I kind of almost understood it completely. But unfortunately, Lasith and I just don't grow on trees.
Yeah, good thing I didn't have to deal with organizing liveries or organizing sponsors for the team or anything like that. All I had to do was focus on team's performance, my performance, and trying to get as many of our cars as possible to the front. That was my main goal.
Yeah. So you're
and when you compete against teams like 95 Sim Sports and a few of the others, I think we had Fishy as well. So it wasn't easy coming up the front.
Yes, yeah. It comes, I think, when you start, the higher you go, the smaller the margins you're chasing, I think, is probably the easiest way in terms of time, what you need to find. But it's also becomes much harder to find a couple of tenths than when you're down the back. Okay, so, all right. So RSRA's run and done, and JP Simshed disbands the team at the same time when, I think it was probably a season before the last season of Real Sim Racing Australia. As you said, there's quite a large amount of people in that team, and there was sort of a breakout of quite a few teams from that. But at that point in time, what makes you decide that this is the moment that you're going to start Phoenix Racing Team?
Well, I believe it was the last 2 seasons or maybe even 3 seasons. I got my son Rehan starting in the team as well. I believe it probably was the last 2 seasons. Memory's not that great around that time. And he started in the team. I brought in Dylan Pereira into the team. And we had a whole bunch of other guys, and Tim Mulford was one of the other guys. And we gelled really well with each other. So when the team was no longer existing, I thought this is a good time to move on and set up my own team, because my plan was to help Rehan develop as a driver. And when I have a whole bunch of other people to help, it's makes it very hard for me to help him and
Mhm.
giving him the help that he really deserves. So I had to make a call that we have to do our own thing. So we came up with Phoenix Racing Team, and we thought, you know what, we're gonna keep it small. There's a whole bunch of people wanted to join our team from JP Simshed, but we decided to keep it very small. Myself, Rehan, Dylan, and Tim, and that sort of got us started with that.
Yep.
And that was just over 2 years ago now, probably 2.5.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. So time flies, doesn't it?
it does. It does.
Okay. So you mentioned there the small nucleus nature of the team. You sort of got me on a couple of questions I was about to ask you, but yeah. So you the small nature of the team, and Rahan comes into the fold. Now just to recap, I guess what Rahan had done at this point in time in sim racing was he'd come through the development series, one season, and then had 2 seasons in the Super Series RSRA. Is that right?
He was in the development series once, and
Yep.
he came runners up. That was called the T2E series.
Mm-hmm.
And he came third in the Super Series twice.
Okay.
And then he won the last one.
Okay. So he's done 3. He did 3 seasons. All right. So
Yeah, 3 seasons of the top tier. Yes.
And for context, how old was Rahan when he entered the development series, and then when he
I
won his
think
Super Series?
I think he was 11 from memory. He might have been just about to turn 11.
Okay. So, yeah. And okay. So we've got another. So we've got Rahan as an 11-year-old into the development series. So he goes 12 weeks in the development series, gets promoted as the runner-up,
Yeah,
and then has his sort of initial season in the Super Series, and then finishes on the podium. He finishes on the podium
yeah,
in the first 2 seasons, and then wins it in the last year. So effectively, that is what would be a 12-month period, those 4 seasons.
correct.
Okay, so yep, we've got an 11. Yeah, so there's another person that's on that trajectory that we talked about earlier with yourself about starting in the split 2 at the start of the year, crown split 1 champion at the end, what would be the end of a 12-month cycle.
Correct.
And at this time, we're probably viewing Super Series as comparable to maybe, say, the second half of a V8 Scots Field, something like that. So the lower half of a split 1 V8 Scots Field, somewhere in about that context. So it's certainly not a field of mugs by any stretch of the
No, no,
imagination.
because I would say some of the drivers that we had in the Super Series was somewhere in the top split of Scops.
Yeah. So
That's
you've
the
got
level they were at. Yeah.
so you've got Dylan right in there. You've got where you were in it for 1 or 2, and then you've got Sean McNamara. You've got Cameron Jones, like all these guys that have sort of moved pretty quickly straight away after RSRA into split 1 Scops as being regular
Correct.
regular fixtures. So it's a good barometer tool to have at the time, because he's we're talking about that. We're talking about someone that's gone from, again, a development driver into being a someone capable of being within the top 20 drivers in the V8 Scops Online Premier Series, which is obviously the pinnacle at that point in time for the V8 supercars in Australia, and as a 12-year-old. So, that's um, I had an inkling that that would be why you would make your own team and keep it small, because it allowed you that more one-on-one time with Rahan. One of my earliest memories of Rahan was when you shared a photo on Facebook and he was sat in the sim. And I think he had an iPad, and he had Madison down and his telemetry up on the iPad while he was in a practice session. I was just thinking to myself, how does an 11-year-old know how to do that?
He's very good at data analysis. It was very easy to teach him those things as well because he actually absorbed it pretty quickly.
Yeah, so okay, so do you recall at what point he sort of come to you and said, um, was he someone that used to watch you in the broadcast of those races? Was he already showing interest in motorsport? Do you recall when he sort of first came to you and said, let me have a crack?
He started motorsports in karting when he was about 6. So I got him a go-kart for his 6th birthday, and we hit the track at Auckland Kart Club. And at the time, you could not race until you were 8. So that's a cadet 9 class, so under 9s. So we were practicing for 2 years because we couldn't race. And then when he was 8, we managed to get him into his first race. I can't remember exactly where he finished, somewhere just outside of top 5. And then we started building on that. Got him some driver coaching from a couple of the top karting guys, Dave Serra, James Serra, multiple national kart title winners. Got coaching from those guys. So got him up to speed in karting. So he was still in cadet 9 class, and unfortunately my work commitments got busy for the weekends. I could not take him to the track. So we decided to put a hold on the karting journey, and decided that he would be on a sim. So he started with Gran Turismo, and he was doing this for a while, and then obviously I started racing in RSRA. So things got a bit interesting from there. He was watching my races. Actually, the entire family was watching my races and cheering me on. And then I thought maybe it's a good idea to get him into iRacing. So he was maybe 10 and a half when he got into iRacing, and got him a little Logitech G29 wheel and got him going.
All right. So you could sense that it was coming, just because he had that sort of track interest, and because I imagine this is sort of corresponding with COVID at the same time.
Yeah, this was the iRacing happened to him around COVID time, just before COVID. But the karting side of it, obviously, well before that.
Yeah. So it was a bit of a tool to sort of keep him going whilst he may not have been able to, with restrictions and stuff from COVID.
Yeah.
Another interesting guy you brought up, you touched on briefly before, was I think everyone that was in that RSRA knew Dylan Pereira as I think he just come in and showed sort of really, really good pace early doors, and so he goes across with you, but then Timmy Mulford comes across with you as well, and he's an interesting guy for many reasons. He had been around for quite some time, and Timmy's he's stoic, I guess is one word I'd use to describe Timmy. Not that I have had any negative interactions with Timmy, but I remember sort of doing some commentary and stuff, and he's sort of like the big bodybuilder that walks out of the gym like he's carrying buckets. Like that's what he drives his car like. You just can't get around him. And he comes out as we referred to them as a split 2 driver in RSR at the time, but now part of the segments that I'm trying to do with this podcast is trying to follow along with a couple of series. He's right there in top split now. So he's another guy that sort of thrived from that. I can only speculate what is just so that in-depth analysis and that data crunching and that sort of environment that you have there, which is really driving success in not just small success. Like I think he's come a very long way within those 2 years of Phoenix.
Yeah, he's developed a lot. We spend a fair bit of time with each other, helping Tim, and even with his Scops journey, we spend a fair bit of time coaching Tim for Scops. And he's one of those guys, he will listen, he will absorb. And yes, some of his bad habits might still be there, but we've sort of evolved him into a driver that he can be proud of.
Yeah, and I didn't. I certainly wouldn't have referred to his habits as bad habits. He's definitely, Sean. I think Sean was talking about last week was picking up guys and talking about how they were often too kind to people on track. Would give their, that's something that people in his team have had to learn, where I would sort of describe Tim as someone that's already had that's probably the first skill that Tim had that come into the team. He just seems to be a little bit different in that perspective, that he knows how to defend his position, but now he can sort of just go eyes forward as well if he needs to, with his overall pace.
Yeah, one thing we worked with him for was pick your battles. Don't try and defend everything. Make sure you keep your eyes forward and race smart. And that's one of the things that we always worked on, whether it's with Rehan or the time that I spent with Dylan. It's always about racing smart. Have a strategy for your race, not just your pit strategy, but overall strategy.
Okay. Yeah. So bigger picture stuff in terms of how the race can unfold. Yeah, because there's obviously multiple elements to consider across the race of a V8 supercar. It's savage on tyres. It can be savage on fuel. It's one of those cars in iRacing that has a really, really wide window of variance on those couple of those things. So yeah, you can win or lose a race on many different facets, and you only need to drop the ball in one facet to have that race come undone.
Correct. It's very easy to do with the supercar.
Yeah. So, we touched on the small nucleus of the team. I think sorry if I get the name wrong here, but I think, was it Steve Vella? I know there's a lot of Vellas going around at the moment. Was it Steve Vella?
Yes.
Was also involved in the team at one point?
He still is. He's a man with a very busy schedule, so he doesn't get to do all the races that he wants to. But he is he's one of our major sponsors for the team too. He owns Melbourne Hydrographics Depot. I've known Steve for a very long time. We used to race fifth scale RC cars that's got little engines. So that's how I met Steve. So I got to know him quite well over the years, and he showed some interest in iRacing, and once he got his rig set up, I said to him, "Why don't you come and race with us? Obviously you're sponsoring the team already. Why don't you jump in and do some races whenever you got time?" So he's done that. He's competed in Scops quite a few times in Split 2, and he can hold his own on track.
Yep. Yeah, well, that's I had a guess that Steve was behind Melbourne Hydrographics Depot. So you touched on your sponsors there. So let's flesh them out a little bit more, and by all means, if you want to rattle them off, go for it right here. But with sponsorship in your team, are you looking to affiliate yourself? Was there sponsorship already, I guess, did you have sponsorships ready to go when you started the team, or is that something that you've sort of built over the 2-year period?
We had once we decided we're gonna go ahead and create our team. One of the first guys that I approached was Steve. It made it easier for me to approach him because I've known him for years.
Yeah.
So I told him, look, I'm creating this team. Rehan is coming up the ranks. It's just a matter of time before he start winning Scops races. So I want to make sure that I'll give him the first opportunity at sponsoring the team. And I don't think he even thought it for a second before he said yes. So Melbourne Hydrographics went on the side of the car. And at the time, I was a customer of Track Racer. So I approached Matt Sten for sponsorship. And he didn't think much of it either. And he said yes. So we had Track Race on the bonnet of the car. So those were the two main sponsors at the start on our car. And we had other companies like Simco and a couple others. We got Aramex Heatherton. So that's how things got started.
Okay, and now you've got it. I was just sort of, doing my due diligence before, and you got quite a list there now. So it's obviously boiling along, and the car's looking fantastic. It's I think you're with Ross at RSW Graphics as well. So
yes,
he's super present. So yeah, okay.
Yeah,
so
he's been great with us. He did our very first livery, and he's done our current livery and everything in between. So he's our go-to guy for liveries. And anything graphic design related. He's designed business logos for me on top of the liveries. So he's done a lot with the team, and he's one of the guys who will never say no to an idea that I have, and he comes up with. I just have to give him guidelines, and he'll come up with a great livery, which I don't have to change much to get it to where I want it to go. So yeah, he's been really great with us, with the team. And another sponsor is Prestige Symptography. So they came on board with us last season to do our photos, and now this season he continues to do photos for us, and we do their setups for Scops. So they want to compete as a team. He's got his own team. They want to compete in Scops this year. So we've agreed to sponsor them in return with our coaching side of it. So Phoenix Driver Development is our coaching arm. So we do setups for V8 supercars and coaching. He's got a good partnership with us now. So our Phoenix Driver Development's on his cars, and his Prestige Symptography is on our cars. We help each other.
Yeah. So that's, it's an element that I've previously thought to be quite close within the sim community, but to be able to get out and network with people, and I think, once you start a conversation with a lot of other people in this, you soon work out that, they're just like you. They have these interests and are just as willing to try and have a good conversation. Like you look at the real world motorsport where, you would never talk to someone from another team. Like that would be frowned upon, like if you were sharing or working together. So, I guess some people can be misconstrued in thinking that that's what it's like in the sim world. But actually, when you reach out and, you share a common interest, you can start building these partnerships. And, and you quite clearly here, I'm seeing you sort of going down the channels, well, staying in the sim community and building stronger and stronger networks, which is resulting in obviously more and more things for yourself and the team. So,
Yeah.
um, is the team's main focus in 2024 still on the Supercars Online Premier Series, or is it now changing as well?
Our main goal is supercars, and it'll be the Scops. Um, and Rehan also does supercars NZ. He's been part of it for a few years now, a couple of years actually, and he's won 4 championships there. So he's going to continue doing that, mostly because it's a great league to be part of, and a lot of our coaching students race in that league as well. So we help them out a fair bit.
Awesome. So let's delve into the coaching side of things just briefly here, and then I think we will go with a bit more on Rahan himself. But so I think I briefly recall seeing the Phoenix coaching program come up. Was it Dane? I forget Dane's last name now, but
No,
he was. That's him. He come up and with a post saying that you guys, this was the first time that I sort of gone, oh, okay. Is this what's sort of happening here? Tell us a bit about how this has all come about, and is this something that you're keeping small and relatively select at the moment, or are you taking on board anybody that wants to come along and sort of improve themselves? I'm assuming in the V8 supercar and learning the data analytics side of things and how to hopefully get themselves on that steep bell curve of rapid improvement that yourself and many others that you've come across have done.
Well, Phoenix driver development side happened in a bit of a strange way. It wasn't something that we were planning to do until a couple of guys who's seen Rehan race and approached me and said, any chance you can help us? Their way of saying that was, you made a 12-year-old into winning a Scops race and coming in the podium in Scops. I'm sure you can help us gain a few tenths or a few seconds, and have some success in the V8 supercar. That sort of got things started. I was never planning on doing something like that. Always my focus being the team and Rehan, and that got me thinking. And all of a sudden, we got 30 plus guys at the moment who are getting regular coaching.
Okay, so that is a lot.
Okay. Yeah. It just became quite big, and it was just word of mouth. I have not advertised. It was just you help one person and they'll go and tell a few others, and all of a sudden we have probably 6 or 7 teams that's getting coaching from us, from anywhere from Supercars NZ to now V8 Vets as well. They're on fixed setups, but we can still give them coaching for that. And the guys who are just doing officials, they're happy just doing officials and get them up to speed.
Okay, so I'm seeing the quote again. Dean, it's really simple. You just need a Lasith Liyanage in your team. Now you can pay him and he will come and do that. So there you go. Okay, so it is possible. Yeah, well, that's it. That's really, I had no idea. And obviously, like you said, it's obviously been a big word of mouth thing for you, venture for you. But I had no idea that you'd grown it into, and when you said today, I had 5 back-to-back coaching sessions, and I'm like, what? That's your whole team, isn't it? Like, what are you talking? But you're actually, you've got clientele, and you've got 30 of them, and that makes a lot of sense as to why you would do that on your Sunday.
Yeah, we did a couple of big group sessions. One of the groups had 7, and the other one had 11. It went for a long time, and everyone got a fair bit out of it. Big number of PBs. Um, Everyone seemed to be very happy with their performance. So I'd say we're doing something right.
Absolutely. And so, okay, so if people are looking to strike a conversation up, where do they head?
Well, they can DM me for starters.
Yep.
We just we're just about to create a Facebook page, because that's something that people been asking. Where's your socials?
Yeah.
So I wasn't planning on doing that, but because obviously people been asking and I had nowhere to direct them to, I've decided to create a page. It's not done yet, but it will be done in the next week or so.
Okay. Yeah. I'll try and jump on that and share that out whenever I see that come up. That's for sure. Okay. Well, that's mate. Well done. That is really interesting, and I've got to say, I mean, it suits you down to the ground from everything that I know and have heard and have seen. It makes complete logic that you would go into something like that. All right. Well, let's deviate now, and this. We've been talking already for 48 minutes, so but this is the main part of sort of what I was trying to hope to talk to you about, and that is Rahan, and and this is the unique angle, I think, of your story where you have your own little man coming into the league, and he was a little man. How old is Rehan?
Well,
Rahan? I swear every broadcast says he's 12 years old, and I feel like I've known him for half a decade. But can you clarify how old is
um,
Rahan?
he's born in 2010 March, so he's going to be 14 this year.
Okay.
He's
So
still
he's
13.
all right. Yeah, so he's not even in his prime yet. So that
No, I don't think he's reached his peak yet. No,
no. I think he'll be going for
ever evolving over the last few years. It's going to be what, three and a bit now, 3.5 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good journey.
Yeah, well, it's just the start, and obviously, yeah. And I thought about, do I ask to see whether Rahan can come in? But I think at some point he will command his own podcast if he ever wants to do it. I think trying to get him on for 10 minutes would be an injustice. So I think something tells me that he'll have something big on his horizon in the next 12 months. That yeah, I might come back and say, Laz, what do you think about this? Look, can we do something again? But okay, so I just wrote a little thing down here where he's obviously come in and he's got the attitude towards learning the data analyst. He's come in and obviously his main car of choice is the supercar, which makes total sense coming from where you were, but multiple times V8 Supercar NZ champion. So I think he won his first season, but he was invited as a wild card, wasn't he? And then he just won the whole thing.
He was. He was invited as a wild card to compete against some of the best supercars NZ drivers they have.
Yeah.
And some of them are Scops top split drivers too. And when he raced the first race, I can't remember how much of a margin he won that by, but it was convincing. It was a convincing win, and they were quite happy with that. And at the time, there wasn't many Australian drivers racing in that series; it was mostly Kiwi. So they decided to invite him to do a full season. So he did the full season. This was 2022, I believe. I'm just going to the trophy cabinet to have a look at the year of the trophy. It's 2022 season 1. It's his first Supercars NZ Championship, and then he won 3 back to back. And then he took a bit of a break, and then focused on other stuff, and then came back and won another one, which was the last season.
I recall you. We've obviously tried to stay in a little bit of touch since the Real Sim Racing Australia. I remember in one conversation you'd mentioned that Rehan had was enjoying earning some pocket money racing in and that's no disrespect to the V8 Supercar NZ League, but it helps put some perspective on, what level Rehan's at this point in time, because, real sim racing Australia doesn't exist anymore. I know it's at the time, certainly early seasons of real sim racing, or like you said before, it was known as Jinx. People probably thought this is a lower level league, but certainly by the end of it, it had started to reach a standard. And certainly when Rehan won the championship, where he now ups as a wildcard entry and dominates a whole league in the first outing, and a league that has, some of the well-known drivers in the game in Australia. So it helps people that understand what level the V8 Supercar NZ championships at, and where Rehan's now coming out as a 12-year-old and where he's at. So he's obviously multiple-time champion in there. He's won the official series in the
he won the
series.
official Div 1 Supercars series 4 times as well.
4 times.
So he's done that 4 times. He's done Supercars NZ 4 times. He's won 2 rounds of Scops last year. He had a whole lot of bad luck with his PC and all that kind of stuff in the middle of the season, which really ruined his chance of fighting for the championship closely. But he came close. He came second in the Supercars Scops Championship last year.
He came second.
Second in the championship,
Yeah. Okay. So, okay. So that last year we see Logitech G Invitational Series sort of emerge onto the scene, but at the same time he's still going up against the cream of the crop there, and he's coming in second as a then 13-year-old. So
he did compete in the Logitech series as well. He got invited to race with Pursuit Sim Racing, which now has become Altus Australia. So Michael Taliancic invited Rehan to join that team to race in Logi. So we've accepted that invitation, and then he qualified for Logitech. I believe he finished second in the qualifying series. So he went through the whole qualifying process, pre-quali, qualifying, and then he entered the series. I think his best result was Philip Allen, I believe. I remember he qualified 7th in Logi against some of the best drivers in the country, and he qualified 7th from memory at Philip Allen.
Okay,
so that's he had a decent run in some of the races. Some of the races he had some bad luck. So overall, wasn't a great finish that we wanted. But then again, I think we sort of bit more than we could chew at that time. Had too many things going on with school, issues that we had with technology, and preparing for Scops and having Logi back to back. Versus some of the guys who were racing in Logi, they did not race Scops at all. So it was a time constraint, had a lot going on. So this year we decided to skip Logi series and focus mostly on Scops.
Okay. So you get a bit of a progression path going on there with that. You'd imagine if he does go along and tick that off, that he then will again change focuses again, as long as that continues to be the landscape for the V8 supercars where we are viewing Logitech as the pinnacle. Because that sort of leads into my next question, where you've got Rehan, who's obviously got just immense ability, and he's doing a lot of racing. So here's a very boring question for you. How do you balance him against something like iRacing burnout. Like I think a lot of us at some point can go down through burnout where you can lose motivation from having overexposure or certainly like a string of unfortunate events or results or incidents that are not your fault. As I guess it's a two-faced question where you're there as Rehan's team manager, coach, but you're also his parent as well. So is that something that you think about much? Is that conscious, or do you just see that that's never going to be a factor with him?
Look, I mean, I can't predict the future, but we brought him up to be a resilient kid. He competes in athletics at the state level. He does karate on the side, and he does sim racing. So he's got a fair bit on, but he's one of those people. If he's busy, he'll focus on something and he'll go hard at it. And I give him breaks from time to time from the sim just to refresh and reset him rather than cutting laps all the time. But now having his coaching side, it's really reinforcing what he knows when he coaches people. So it's sort of a downtime for him, stepping away from racing and helping others at the same time.
Okay, so he's involved in the coaching element as well.
So he does a lot of the coaching. Yeah.
Okay, so there's another feather in the cap. That's awesome. Yeah, because I guess we had sort of there's a sim racing boom that happens over the COVID period where we see things like the V8, the actual V8 supercars come and race a series, and we had several subsequent sort of E-series broadcasted on Foxtel. Do you think we'll ever get back to those? And again, you can't really predict the future, but you sort of got Rehan that's at 14 years old, where he's got so much time in the sim that if those series ever come back again, there's every chance that as long as he keeps going, that he'll be right in a box office seat to try and get into one of those. Is that something that you think A, is possible that will come back, and B, you think that might be on his horizon?
Definitely. I mean, just to give you a bit of background on that, I think in 2022 they had the Pizza Hut driver surge. So that is for the E-series. He qualified for that one and he came in the top 10. I think only the top guy got the opportunity to go into E-series. So he did quite well, and at the time he was only 12, to qualify for that. And then the E-series came around, and we were about to enter in for E-series, but the age limitation was 16. So unfortunately, he could not have a crack at that. So we're definitely hoping that'll be on the horizon for us at some point when E-series comes back, hopefully.
Yeah, because I'm not too sure where it's at myself. Whether it did run last year, I don't think it did. But
I don't think they did. No.
Yeah, because there's now an element where there's certainly if the V8 supercars are to go anywhere, that they'll need that to come back. Then you have a prize money or something like a large prize stake that it's never going to be an income, I suppose, but it's going to be certainly something that because he's 14, there's probably no pressure on him to work. Like it could be an income for him, and we've got the Porsche Take You Esports Supercar. We've seen a lot of drivers from the supercar community go into that, and that's now sitting at over $200,000 US for
Correct.
the prize pool. So he fits the bill and the timeline for if this ever does start to progress in terms of an industry where you can earn a living. There might be something there for him.
Yeah, I would say so. Because he's not even 14 yet. So I reckon a lot of the race car drivers or even sim racers, they don't peak until they're in their 20s.
Yeah.
And that's a fact. So he's got quite a few years to perfect the craft that he knows. So there's always a lot of opportunities in the sim racing side of it. Now that Motorsports Australia is involved in it too. Last year, there was a Tri Nations Cup that Rehan qualified for in a GT3. So he wanted to do something different. He represented Australia in the Tri Nations against New Zealand and UK. So he had a good crack at that, qualified. And I can't remember where he finished exactly, but he had a good run. So things like that. And they had the F4 championship and gave him the opportunity to go to Malaysia into the Sepang circuit. Obviously, that was a minimum of 14 years old, so he could not compete for that one, but hoping that it'll be there again this season. So there's a few things to look forward to.
Yeah, there's some clear opportunities, whether it is prize money or whether it's other things that are coming down the line that he's getting himself right in the thick of to qualify for.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, Laz, we've been going for over an hour now. I feel like this as long as you're open to it, is another one that we can check back in with, down the track. Certainly once Scott's is back up and underway, and we might get a chance to talk to Rehan, but the time goes fast. But I am gonna wrap it up there. So, mate, if you like, go ahead by all means and shout out any sponsors or anyone in the team that you want to give a shout out to, and mate, we'll see it out.
Yeah, I want to give a big thanks to our major sponsors of the team, Melbourne Hydrographics, DHF Tires, we got RSW Graphics, Prestige Cinematography, we got Bubbles and Balloons, Aramex Heatherton, and of course Rehan's personal sponsor, Hybrid Racing Simulations, and they came on board with Rehan for 2024 season, and we all know and is a well-respected guy, Brett, with Hybrid Racing Simulations, and it's an honor to have that on the side of Rehan's car for 2024.
We did skip over that, didn't we? I did see that. I was meaning to ask you about that, because that is a big one. That they've been a big importer of sort of premium sim products, and they jump on board. They back Rehan now. And I'll tie this into another thing that's going on. But you also now have a second boy entering the sim world. Are you going to have to lodge a development application with the council to sort of renovate your sim room? It's getting that big now.
Well, I was planning for that. So the sim room we built was quite a large one to accommodate 3 sims, and lucky for me, his sim is quite tiny at the moment. So
at the moment, yeah.
But we might have to reshuffle things around when he gets to a level where he can have triple screens and have a full size rig. But I think I'm safe for a few years. He's only 4.
So it is looking more like a shop front at the moment. You could hire that place out to people.
I'm hoping that I can train some young guys to how to drive, because Rehan went from sim to driving real cars. Now he's competing in his first event next weekend. So there's a car that we use for competing in hill climbs. So he'll be doing some carnacross in that, just to get the eye in this year, and hopefully do hill climbs next year.
That's awesome stuff, Laz. Look, I really appreciate you jumping on and having a chat at, pretty reasonably short notice, and you wouldn't have known much about me or what I'm doing here, so I just appreciate it, mate. And look, Can't say enough about you, really.
Thank you. And yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to jump in and have a chat. Probably went a little bit longer than we expected, but hopefully it's a good one for everyone.
Yeah, I hope so too. Alrighty, mate. Thanks very much.
All right. Have a good one.
That is it for tonight's show. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Lasith Liyanage. As always, if you enjoyed the show, you can follow along by jumping onto the Sim Racing in Focus.blog website, signing up to the newsletter to be reminded when a new podcast episode gets released each week. Follow along on Spotify, Facebook page, Instagram, and Twitter, all of which you'll find linked in the show notes. And keep an eye out for the show on Apple Podcasts. And hopefully, in the not too distant future, the feed might appear on YouTube as well. So keep an eye out for all that. But other than that, it's bye for now.